8 Sig minds, you have an extremely rare personality. Ladies and gentlemen, I often talk about the importance of starting with why, but sometimes discovering who we are is just as important as knowing why we do what we do. We live in a world that constantly tries to mold us, fit us into categories, boxes, algorithms. But every so often, we come across someone who doesn't fit any mold at all. Someone different, not weird, not rebellious, just rare. And maybe, just maybe, that someone is you. So today, I want to share with you 8 signs that you might have an extremely rare personality and why that's not just a gift, but a responsibility. In a world that constantly pulls our attention in 1,000 directions, depth has become a rare commodity. Most people are busy reacting, scrolling, liking, moving from one distraction to another, but not you. You pause, you think, you reflect, you question. That ability to dive beneath the surface isn't just a personality trait, it's a quiet form of brilliance. Having a deep personality means you're not content with surface level explanations. When someone gives you an answer, you want to understand the reason behind it. When you see something happen, you don't just ask what it is, you ask why it is. That curiosity sets you apart. While many people consume information to sound smart, you consume it to gain clarity. You aren't impressed by noise, you're drawn to insight. Depth also shows up in the way you process your experiences. Instead of rushing past moments, you linger in them. You think about what they mean, how they've shaped you, and what lessons they hold. You replay conversations not to overanalyze, but to understand. You revisit decisions not to dwell, but to grow. Your mind is a landscape of reflection, constantly analyzing, learning, and evolving. That makes you different. It makes you someone who grows not just with time, but through intention. People with rare personalities often feel like outsiders, not because they're antisocial or unfriendly, but because they don't connect with surface level living. You might find yourself disengaged in conversations that lack substance. It's not that you don't care, it's that your mind is wired for meaning. You're not interested in talking about people, you're interested in talking about ideas. That desire for depth in your relationships and conversations often sets you apart. It may even make others think you're distant, but in truth, you're simply selective. You crave real connection, not noise masquerading as connection. Depth also allows you to be a safe space for others. When someone speaks to you, they feel heard, truly heard. You're not just listening for your turn to speak, you're listening to understand. You hear the words behind the words, the emotion behind the tone. That presence is rare. That level of attention, it's healing, it's powerful, and it's why people are drawn to you, even if they don't quite know why. We live in a culture that praises speed, surface, and short attention spans, but you move differently, you dig deeper, and that makes you not just rare, it makes you necessary. In times of crisis, people look to those with depth. In moments of doubt, they follow those who reflect. You might not be the loudest in the room, but your voice carries weight because it comes from a place of understanding, not impulse. There's something profoundly powerful about choosing authenticity over approval. In a society that often rewards conformity, the decision to be unapologetically yourself is both courageous and uncommon. Most people are wired to seek acceptance. They bend, shrink, and mold themselves to fit expectations, to be liked, to be validated. But when you choose to stay true to who you are, even at the risk of being misunderstood or rejected, that's when your rare personality starts to shine. Choosing authenticity means you're not playing a role to gain applause. You're not crafting a version of yourself to please others. You're showing up as you are, imperfect, evolving, honest. And in a world where so many are performing, that honesty is like a breath of fresh air. It's magnetic, not because it demands attention, but because it resonates with something deep inside the people around you, the longing to be real themselves. You understand that being liked by everyone isn't the goal. In fact, you know that if everyone agrees with you, you're probably not being fully yourself. That's not arrogance. That's clarity. You've realized that approval is often fleeting and conditional, but authenticity is lasting, it's grounded, and more importantly, it's freeing. When you're authentic, you no longer need to remember which version of yourself you showed to whom. You don't have to wear a mask that changes from room to room. You simply are. This commitment to your true self can make others uncomfortable. Why? Because when you show up authentically, it holds up a mirror. It challenges people to confront their own masks, their own compromises. Some will be inspired by your example, others may resist it. But you don't let that stop you. You've learned that being misunderstood is a small price to pay for being real. It's not that you don't care what people think, you're human, but you care more about what's right for your soul than what's easy for your image. That shift in priority is what separates the rare from the ordinary. You're not chasing popularity, you're walking in purpose. And purpose doesn't always make you popular. Sometimes it makes you stand alone, but you've grown to be okay with that because the peace that comes from being in alignment with yourself is worth more than any external praise. There's also a quiet strength in your authenticity. You don't need to shout to be heard. Your presence speaks volumes. People sense your sincerity. They trust your words because they know they come from a place of truth, not performance. And in a world filled with curated personas and highlight reels, your rawness cuts through the noise. But make no mistake, being authentic doesn't mean being rigid. It doesn't mean you're never wrong or that you don't grow. In fact, it's the opposite. When you're authentic, you're open to feedback because your self-worth isn't tied to always being right. You're constantly evolving, but never pretending. You change when you need to, not when others demand it. That's real strength. Flexible, but rooted. Your rare personality is defined not just by how you show up, but by why you show up that way. You've made a conscious decision to live from the inside out, not the outside in, to let your inner values shape your outer world. That kind of life requires integrity, vulnerability, and relentless self-awareness. And the most beautiful part, when you choose to live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. You become a quiet invitation, a reminder that it's safe to be real, that it's enough, that we don't have to earn our worth by being someone else. So if you sometimes feel out of place for not fitting in, remember, you weren't meant to. You're not here to blend, you're here to shine. Not for the applause, but because that's who you are, and that in itself is rare. There's something different about the way you connect with people. You're not drawn to crowds or chatter for the sake of noise. You're not energized by surface level conversations that skim across topics without ever touching something meaningful. You crave depth. You want to feel something real, something alive. So small talk feels draining to you. It's just that your soul is wired for connection, not convention. You don't want to talk about the weather. You want to talk about what keeps someone up at night. You want to know their dreams, their fears, their struggles. You want to understand what they're passionate about, what they're fighting for, what they've overcome. And that's not a weakness. It's a rare kind of emotional intelligence, one that sees beyond the words and reaches for the why behind them. When you're with someone, you're fully present. You listen, not just to reply, but to understand. You notice the shift in their tone, the flicker in their eyes, the pause in their breath. That kind of attention is uncommon. It creates safety. It builds trust. And in a world full of noise, your quiet depth speaks volumes. You've likely had moments where you felt out of sync with social norms. Maybe at parties and meetings or during casual conversations, you've felt like an outsider. Not because you're awkward, but because you're different. You're not content with how's it going and what's new. You want to peel back the layers. You want to ask the questions that make people pause and reflect. And when you find someone who's willing to go there with you, it feels like electricity, like a rare spark between souls. That's because you're searching for alignment, not just interaction. You're not trying to collect people, you're trying to connect with them. You'd rather have one deep, honest conversation than a dozen polite, forgettable ones. That quality isn't something you can fake, it's something people feel. And whether they realize it or not, it draws them in. But being this way isn't always easy. Some people misread your silence as disinterest, your depth as intensity. You may have been told to lighten up or just go with the flow. But you know that watering down your essence just to make others comfortable only leaves you feeling disconnected from them and from yourself. You don't want to be liked for a version of you that isn't real. You'd rather be misunderstood for your honesty than accepted for your performance. Your aversion to small talk isn't about being better than anyone. It's about being honest with yourself. You know life is short and time is precious. You'd rather spend it talking about what matters. That could be someone's purpose, their beliefs, their healing, or even their pain. You're not afraid of the heavy stuff. In fact, you lean into it because you understand that real connection often lives in the places most people avoid. And this is what makes your personality rare. You bring a kind of intentionality to relationships that's becoming harder to find. You're not interested in collecting acquaintances. You're invested in building meaning. And when you do open up, when you share your own truths, you do so with vulnerability and honesty. That gives others permission to do the same. You make people feel seen, and not just in a superficial way, but in a soul deep kind of way. So if you've ever felt like you don't click with everyone, that's okay. You're not meant to. You're not built for the crowd, you're built for connection. And even if it takes time to find those who match your depth, the ones who do will treasure your presence, because in a world full of small talk, you are a rare and powerful conversation. There's a quiet force within you that most people overlook, even you sometimes. It's not always loud or logical, and it doesn't need a spreadsheet or statistics to make itself known. It simply knows. You've felt it in those moments when your gut told you something before your mind could explain it. You've had experiences where something inside whispered, "This is right," or "Something's off," long before you had the fact. That voice, that internal signal, it's your intuition. And it's not random. It's not luck. It's a rare kind of inner wisdom. In a world obsessed with data, proof, and logic, intuition often gets dismissed. People want reasons they can see, steps they can track, but you understand that not everything meaningful comes with a manual. Some things are simply felt. And that feeling, when you learn to trust it, can guide you with surprising accuracy. Your intuition is a kind of pattern recognition born from experience, sensitivity, and a deep awareness of energy and intention. It processes more than your conscious mind ever could. It picks up on tone, body language, timing, and energy shifts, all in the blink of an eye. And yet, you might have doubted it at times. Maybe you had to learn the hard way when you ignored your gut and things fell apart. But with each experience, you began to understand. Your intuition isn't there to make life easier. It's there to make life truer. It's not about predicting the future. It's about helping you stay aligned with who you are and what matters to you most. Intuition shows up in many ways. Sometimes it's a gentle nudge. Sometimes it's a loud internal alarm. You might not always be able to explain why you feel a certain way about a person, opportunity, or decision, but you know it in your bones. And the more you honor it, the stronger it becomes. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the more it trusts you. Having this kind of instinct doesn't mean you're always right, but it does mean you're deeply tuned in to yourself, to others, to your environment. It gives you an edge in relationships, in work, in creativity. You can often sense what someone's going through without them saying a word. You can feel the vibe in a room before anyone else notices. That's not magic. That's your awareness in action. The truth is, intuitive people often operate differently. You don't always need long explanations or detailed pros and cons. You can make decisions quickly, not recklessly, but instinctively. Others might not understand how you just knew, but you don't need them to. Your choices come from a place of alignment, not just analysis. Still, it takes courage to trust yourself in a world that constantly tells you to look outside for answers. We're conditioned to believe that wisdom comes from experts, books, and external authorities. And while those things have value, they should complement your inner voice, not silence it. Your intuition is one of your most powerful tools. When you listen to it, you make choices that reflect your values, not someone else's agenda. You don't just live from your head, you live from your whole being. That's rare. That's powerful. And that's why people with your personality often become leaders, creators, healers, and guides. You see what others miss, you sense what others ignore, and you help people navigate not just the world around them, but the world within them. So, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, too impulsive, or too deep, take it as a sign. You're not too much. You're tuned in. You don't just have intuition, you live by it. And that's not only rare, that's revolutionary. In a world that often rewards toughness, detachment, and keeping emotions in check, being deeply sensitive can feel like a burden. But the truth is, it's one of your greatest strengths. Feeling things deeply, whether it's your own emotions or those of the people around you, isn't weakness. It's a kind of awareness, a capacity for empathy and understanding that many people simply don't. If you have this rare sensitivity, you probably already know what it means to walk into a room and feel everything before a word is spoken. You sense tension, you pick up on energy, you notice the little shifts that others miss. That's not overthinking, it's emotional intelligence. Your sensitivity allows you to connect with people on a profound level. When someone talks to you, they feel heard, not just because you listen, but because you care. You feel their pain as if it were your own. You celebrate their joy like it's yours. You don't just sympathize, you empathize, and that makes your presence incredibly healing. People gravitate toward you, not because you always have the right words, but because you have the right heart. You hold space for others. You allow them to be real, raw, and messy without judgment. That's not common, but let's be honest, living with that kind of emotional openness isn't always easy. Sensitivity can be exhausting. It can make the world feel overwhelming, loud places, negativity, conflict, cruelty. They hit you harder than they hit others. You've probably had moments where you wished you could just turn it off and be less affected. You've been told to toughen up, stop overreacting, or let it go. But what those people don't understand is that your emotional depth isn't a flaw. It's part of what makes you so extraordinary. Because you feel so much, you also see so much. You can spot beauty where others see nothing. You find meaning in small moments, inspiration in everyday life. You're moved by music, art, nature, acts of kindness. You notice the details, the things people skip over.